I'm Jeanette Canes from Jewelry Arts Inc. Today is part 2 of how to solder on a bail.
The existing solder from...
And because it supports it. Anything up in the air, even if you ochre it, sometimes it can just be like, yeah, exactly right. And then cue rage. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes, I do.
so speaking of rage in the studio, we're not gonna have any rage, but we've got our lovely little bail. See that little twisted wire bail right there, and we're getting ready to solder it. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can solder this one shut first and stretch it round, and then thread this through it and set it up to solder on there. But it is such a pain in the ass, so rage, because when you have both things there, it's so aggravating to try to get it set up. So I usually don't do that. I usually solder the little guy on first and then thread the big one through there.
Absolutely.
You know, there's more ways than one to do things always, but to me, I'd rather do this. But then the only thing we have to be concerned about is that that jump ring is up in the air like that. So we could put a little ochre on there or something to protect it, to keep it from reflowing. But any seam up in the air, those little shits, they want to fall, they want to do bad, naughty things. So normally what I might do is use like a third arm or something to hold it up, but that's like a big pain in the ass too. So what I was gonna say is we've been using this soldering, the soldering clay. It's really handy for stuff where it's just not easy to support it or hold it. You can use this to like hold things with prongs in it. You can do all kinds of stuff. What I'm going to really do for this, it's not so much I need it for this. I'm just going to shove a little bit under that jump ring so that it's supported, so that when we heat it, I'm not worried about it, you know, reflowing and slipping down.
The half.
Yeah, the little half guy. It's not so much that I'm worried about the other guy, it's just I want that to be supported. So, and who doesn't like, you know, working with a little gooey clay? I added a little water to this to keep it moist, so it probably didn't need to be that wet, but. And basically this clay, it holds it in place, you know what I mean? When you're done, you peel it off, and then there will be a little bit right on top that's probably hard and crusty, and that you throw away. But everything underneath is usually still soft enough and reusable. So, but you can feel it. Like you press it with your fingers, whatever's like ossified, you just throw away, the rest of it's good. So I'm just gonna like do like this. I don't need like probably about half of that. So you see what I mean? You can just take it and just press it up against things and around things to support them so that they can't move when you're soldering. I've been starting to use it a lot more with prongs because it's much more convenient, especially when you have multiple ones, which we'll probably do for yours when we do some of those. Like, it's just great to have something that's soft that you can just shape around it. And so the seam is right here. So I left that like sticking out because normally I would do that anyway. I would have it as far away from this as possible. But now I just don't need to worry about that little jump ring at all, and I can forget about it, which is what I want to do. So normally with this, I'm just going to put a little dot of paste flux there, and then I'll put a little ball of solder, and we'll solder. Something little like this, we probably will use a 00 tip, or we could also use a 0, but we're going to heat across, because the whole way to not have issues with your piece when you're doing stuff like this is to remember the overflow of your tip. So what that means is this. A lot of times when people are soldering, they're not thinking about where the rest of the flame is going. Do you know what I'm saying? So in other words, if I'm trying to do this and I've got this pointed in, I may be looking here. Meanwhile, the rest of my flame is doing something bad and naughty over here. So you always want to set it up so that I'm going to do it like this and heat across so that any of my excess flame is right here and can't bother anything, basically, okay? Because that's a really easy thing to sort of forget, and then naughtiness will ensue.
Can you see it, Susie? Go ahead.
No tool works for everything. You know what I mean? But it's nice to have this because there's definitely things that are harder with the mag block that are easier with this. Just trying to shove a little on there so that, you know. Because also this is clay, it's dirt, so it does act like ochre also. You know what I mean? If it's right in where the seam is. The only thing I don't like is getting my hands dirty, but that ship has sailed once I became a jeweler, so.
And so you want to be careful it's not touching the seam that you are trying to
Yeah,
solder.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because this clay, I mean, again, it's dirt in a sense, so it will act the same as like ochre or whatever. So yes, you have to make sure not to get that in the seam, you know, right where your solder seam is, or else it may not flow. Okay. So I'm going to dry that a tiny bit.
Zero?
Yeah, let's use a 1 or a 0. Let's go nuts. Okay, so you dry it like that. Hey Lexi Lou, how you doing? Yes, it is hot and gross out. So you see how it's right there, touching the side? Yep. Now if I usually just go with that little ball. See that? Oh, close.
Personal.
Yep, exactly. So I give it a little swipe or two so that hopefully it's dry and it's not going to move. And then I just heat from across, and you see what I mean about what I was explaining with the overflow. Okay, it flowed. I'm going to add another piece in there to fill it in a little more because it's twisted wire and it doesn't like meet super perfectly. But so that's all you got to do.
I love the idea.
I love when
Play
it
for
sizzles.
prongs. Yeah.
It's
Yeah, because the mag blocks are such a pain in the butt.
Well, like the mag blocks are good, but the problem is as soon as you move something in there, then your hole is too big
You have to dig a fresh hole.
and you need a fresh hole. And that can be irritating. I don't do it on purpose. It just somehow, there we go. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm right there with you.
we are talking about jewelry topics. But yeah, so.
Find the humor where you can.
Just pretend that didn't happen. Here we go. Because normally with something like this, I'm just going to add solder till that seam is filled in to my satisfaction. If it takes a couple pieces, you know, so what? Yeah, I want one more. It's closed, but twisted wire is a little persnickety, but that piece is ever so slightly too dainty, so I'm just going to cut a slightly larger one. We were talking about this the other day too, about like people are like, you know, oh, what if I don't? It's like, just stick another piece in there. It's not like you only have one chance to solder something. You know what I mean? We're just gonna like keep putting it in there till we're happy with it.
I want to take a close-up look. But
Yeah, go for it.
Because people are always afraid their seams will reflow. And the truth is, your seam probably reflows lots of times. But if it's flat, it just spins around and it doesn't really do anything bad, if you know what I'm saying. It's when you've got a post up in the air or a jumpring hanging out that bad things can happen.
Gravity takes it.
Exactly. Gravity is a heartless bitch.
it's true. It's hard to get a clean seam.
Well, and have you noticed that when I need to move something, I heat the solder, and then all you have to do usually is just touch it or tap it, and it falls right off. So if something's up in the air and it gets hot, it wants to go. So then after this, I'll show you how to peel this off, which is we literally just, you know, pull it off of there, and whatever's dry and crunchy we throw away. Throw it in the pickle. Dry it a little bit.
In this case, you're focusing the flame on the jumper.
Yep,
Because you have no choice.
we must. Okay. So usually then I take it and put it in some water because I don't want to burn my fingers. And like anything that's super hard and crunchy, like in crumbles, you throw away. All this nice soft stuff, you just put right back in the container. Okay? So throw it in the pickle, we'll take a look at it and see how it looks.